It was just past midnight when Samyanek knocked on my apartment door hard enough to rattle the frame. I was standing in me living room with a half-eaten sandwich in my hand, still in my work clothes, the television murmuring to itself in feedback. Ever comes by that late? Not anymore. After my divorce 2 years ago, my world got quiet. I kept it that way on purpose. I live in a small place in Seattle, thin walls, old carpet. You can hear your neighbors arguing if you listen too closely. I work as a project manager for a construction company. My days are meetings, deadlines, and my evenings are simple. Dinner, a run in the morning, sleep, repeat. It's not exciting, but it's steady. Then knocking came again. I opened the door and forgot how to breathe. Emma stood there, soaked from the rain. Her hair clung to her cheeks. Her eyes were red and swollen like she'd been crying for hours. In her hands was a thick envelope of vent from the weather. I hadn't seen her in 5 years. Emma was my ex-wife Klesianja's sister. The last time I saw her, she was a loud art student with paint on her jeans and opinions about everything. 23 and now she looked older, worn down, like life had pressed on her harder than it should have. Ryan, she said, her voice barely holding together. I need your help. I just stared at her. We were never close. Even when I was married to her sister, we spoke. In small talk at holidays, that was it. Can I come in? She asked. I stepped aside. She walked in without another word, leaving wet footprints across my floor. She sat on the couch, shaking, not just from the cold. From fear, I sat across from her. Dus, Clara, know you're here. She shook her head quickly. No, and she can't. No, but it can. She opened the envelope and pulled out a stack of papers. She handed Sven to me. At the top was America Gellison's, her name already filled in. At the bottom, a blank line, signature of her husband. I looked up at her. What is to sign it? She said, her voice steadier now, like she had practiced Edia's words. Sign it and I'll explain the verity. You want me to marry you? Yes. The room smaller. Emma, are you serious? If I am not married by Saturday, she whispered, I lose my son. The words hung in the air between us. I didn't even know you had a child. He's 3. His name is Owen. Her hands trembled as she told me about Jordan. The father left when the baby was 6 months old. Thieslins had followed. The years she raised Owen alone. Then the senorita and the expensive lawyer. That claimed that she wasn't stable enough. That Asmal apartment and night classes mattered. Unfit, he's married now, she said. Big house, money. They look perfect on paper. My lawyer says if I show up single, I lose. She looked at the lessons in my hands. I need a husband. He stared at the line where my name would go. This was crazy, complicated, dangerous, but somewhere in the middle of her fear, I thought about a 3-year-old boy who didn't ask for any of this. If I do this, I said slowly, there have to be rules. She sat up straighter. No lies, I said. You tell me everything, and if this ever becomes real, it's because we both choose it, not because you have ink on a page. Her eyes softened. I wouldn't ask for more than you're willing to give. I picked up the pen. My hand hovered. Something inside me said, if I closed that door tonight, I'd regret it for the rest of my life. So, I signed. Thursday morning came too fast. I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that signature. My name tied to hers in ink that couldn't be erased with regret. Emma texted at 6 o'clock, courthouse at 8. The sky was gray when I met her outside the King County building. She wore jeans and a simple sweater. Her hair was pulled back tight, like she was holding herself together the same way. We didn't talk Mac while we waited for the doors to open. What do you even say to Samiano married 12 hours ago? Inside, the clerk handed us a form. Basic questions. Names, birthdays, previous marriages. It checked yes. It checked no. We paid $70. The clerk stamped the paper and said congratulations. Without looking up. And just like that, it was done. No vows, no rings, no witnesses who cared. Just a stamp. We stepped back into the cooler morning air. Cars rushed by like nothing had changed. But everything had. Thank you, Emma said quietly. Isn't it? I replied. So I'm in. She chested me like she wasn't sure whether to believe that. We drove to her apartment. The building was older, but clean, 3 flights of narrow stairs. Her place was small, maybe 600 square feet, but it felt warm. There were paintings on the walls, real ones, bright colors and soft edges. The fridge was covered in children's drawings. Tiny Snaker sat by the door. Owen's with my aunt. She said he'll be back this afternoon. You should meet him before the hearing. The thought made Mr. Mac twist. I've built office towers, managed crews of 50 men, but meeting a 3-year-old suddenly felt harder than I'll affair that. We sat at her kitchen table with coffee between us. She opened a folder full of papers. My lawyer's meeting us tomorrow. We need our story straight, so we started building one. We ran into each other 2 months ago at a bookstore. We got coffee. We kept talking. We fell fast. We went over small details. Couples are supposed to talk. No. Her favorite color was yellow. She hated mushrooms. She drank Earl Grey at night and painted when she couldn't sleep. I told her I ran every morning at 6 o'clock. That I hadn't dated since mid-divorce. My apartment felt too quiet most days. The more we talked, the less it felt like pretending. Around 3, there was a knock at the door. Emma froze for a second. Then she opened it. A little boy stepped inside, holding her aunt's hand. Messy brown hair, dinosaur shirt, big watchful eyes. Owen looked at me like I didn't belong there, and he was right. "This is Ryan," Emma said gently, kneeling down to his level. "He's going to be staying with us for a while." Owen didn't answer. He just walked past me and sat on the floor with a box of blocks. I stood there unsure. "Maybe you could help him," Emma whispered. So I sat down on Thorkapit, slow and careful. "Ambalinga Tower," Owen said without looking at him. "Mind if I help?" He thought about it, then handed me a red block. "This goes on the bottom." And just like that, I was building something fragile and tall, with a child whose future depended on us. We built that tower in silence. At first, Owen would hand me a blot. I would place it where he told me. He took setup seriously, brow furrowed, tongue pressed to the side of his mouth when after a few minutes, he looked up at me. "Are you my mom's friend?" I glanced toward the kitchen. Emma was pretending to wash a mug. Booch was watching us closely. "Yeah," I said gently. "I'm your mom's friend," Hannah did, accepting that answer without. Then he picked up a green block. "Do you like dinosaurs?" "I do," I said. "Which one's your favorite?" His swell face lit up. "T-Rex because he has big teeth." "That's a good reason," I said. The tower leaned a little to one side. Owen adjusted it carefully. When it finally toppled, he burst into laughter. The sound filled the small apartment in a way that felt bigger than the room. Later, when Emma called us to it, Owen grabbed my hand like it was the most natural thing in the world. His fingers were small and warm. Something shifted in my chest right then. Hadn't know about courtrooms or custody battles. He didn't know his father wastering to take him away. He just knew his towel had fallen and dinner was ready after we ate. Emma gave him a bath. I could hear splashing in her voice, telling him to stop soaking his floor. When she brought him out in pajamas, he walked straight over to me. "Will you read me a story?" I hesitated for half a second. Then I nodded. Emma handed me a book about a bear who couldn't sleep. Owen climbed onto the couch beside me, leaning against my arm as I read by the last page. His breathing had slowed. Emma carried him to his room. When she came back, she sat beside me on the couch. The rain had started again, tapping softly against windows. "He likes you," she said. "That's good, right?" "It's very good." We sat there quietly, the apartment dim except for a lamp in the corner. Then Emma spoke again, softer this time. "I didn't just come to you because you were disconnected from my family." I turned to her. "I came because I remember who you are." I frowned. "What do you mean?" She folded her hands together. "Years ago when I dropped out of college, everyone was angry, disappointed. Claire wouldn't even look at me. By you, Yao asked if I was okay. I barely remembered that conversation. "You listened," she said. "You didn't try to fix me. You didn't lecture me. You just treated me like I mattered." Her eyes were tired, but steady. When I needed someone to trust with Owen's life, I thought of. The room felt very quiet. Somewhere between the blocks and Thibetime story. This had stopped feeling like paperwork. It felt like something heavier, something real, beginning to take shape. Tuesday came faster than either of us were ready for. I woke up in the spare bedroom at Emma's place with a tight feeling in my chest, the kind you get before a storm when the air feels too still. I put on the only suit I owned and had been hanging in my closet for years, used mostly for weddings and one funeral. I smoothed the wrinkles with my hands, knowing it wouldn't make much difference. Emma was already in the kitchen when I walked out. She wore a grey suit that made her look older, more serious, but her hands were shaking as poured coffee. "Let me," I said softly, taking the pot from her. Owen was still asleep. Emma's aunt would pick him up soon. No child should sit in a while adults argue over his life. We didn't say much while we drove. The courthouse looked colder than he remembered. Hard walls, bright lights, too clean. Emma's lawyer, Michelle, met us in the hallway. "Remember," she said, calmly answered only what you're asked. "Stay steady." Inside, Jordan sat at a long table with his lawyer. AI looked confident, comfortably belonged there. I'd never met him before, but I knew enough. The judge and Todd, an older woman with tired eyes. Lauren's lawyer spoke first. He talked about Emma's small apartment, her evening classes, the time she'd been late picking Owen up. He made it sound like she was barely holding her life. Then he turned to me. "Mrs. Torres recently married Mr. Beck Hesed, after 5 years of no contact. Convenient timing." The judge looked at Emmy. "Mr. Beck, when did you reconnect?" 2 months ago, I said carefully. "We were into each other and married shortly after." "Yes." The lawyer leaned forward. "Isn't it true this marriage was done to improve her custody case?" My heart pounded, but my voice stayed steady. "No," I said. "I signed those papers because he wanted to be there for Emma and for Owen. You've known the child less than a week." "That's true," I said, "but he chose to show up. That matters." The judge raised a hand for silence. Emma took a stand next. She described mornings with pancakes, bedtime stories, the stuffed elephant Owen couldn't sleep without. When asked why she worked at evenings, she said, Because I need to. I'm doing my best. Then came their hardest question. Wouldn't your son be better off in a larger home with more money? Emma's voice broke, but she didn't look away. Owen needs the has been there every day of his life. I stayed. That has to count for something. The room felt quiet. The judge nodded slowly. We'll review everything, she said. Decision by the end of the week. We walked out into Thelaway and Emma's legs gave out. She sat down on a bench, shaking. I sat beside her, and for the first time since signing that paper, I understood how much this wasn't about pretending anymore. It was about staying with harder than the courtroom. Wednesday passed. Then Thursday, every time Emma Sohn buzzed, her shoulders jumped. She barely ate. She moved around the apartment like someone holding their breath underwater. Owen didn't notice his tension the way adults do. He built her as he asked for snacks. He did no saw sounds that echoed down the hallway. Life to him was still simple. It tried to keep it that way. I made Eppin cakes one morning. Even though mainly pushed hers around the plate, I sat on the floor and built another crooked tower with Owen. I read bedtime stories in a steady voice, even when my mind drifted back to that courtroom. Friday afternoon, the call finally came. Emma answered on the second ring. I watched her face while she listened. It went pale then still. She wants us in her chambers in an hour, Emma said after hanging up the judge. The drive felt longer than it was. Owen was with Emson again. I hated that he didn't understand what was happening. Maybe I thought it was a mercy. Jordan and his wife were already there when we arrived. He didn't look at Eustace's time. The judge sat behind her desk, glasses low on her nose. I've made me decision, she said. Emma's hand fell. Mine primary custody will remain. With Emma Torres, Emma gasped. The sound wash off sob, half breath returning after too long. I squeezed her hand. Mr. Torres will have supervised visitation every other weekend. The judge continued. He is the father. He has the right to build a relationship. But stability matters, and this child has it. Jordan muttered something under his breath, but it didn't matter anymore. It was done. Outside in the parking lot, Emma collapsed against me. She cried to my shoulder, her whole body shaking. But this time, it was relief. We won, she whispered. He's staying. That night, after Owen was asleep, the apartment felt different. Lighter like Simeon had opened a window we didn't know was closed. Emma sat across from me on the couch. You can go home now, she said quietly. You did what you promised. I looked around at the small room, the toys, the paintings, life we'd into. Do you want me to leave? I asked. She hesitated. No, I just don't want you to feel trapped. I shook my head. I'm not here because of a court case anymore. The word surprised to even. I'm here because when I'm sitting at this table with you and Owen, it filled. Emma's eyes filled, but she didn't look away. Something had shifted, and neither of us could pretend not to feel it. I didn't go back to my apartment that night. At first it was practical. Owen needed routine. Emma needed rest. I told myself I was just staying until things settled. But weeks passed, and I kept finding reasons not to leave. I'd drive back to my place to grab more clothes, check the mail, water a loony plant in the kitchen window. Each time I locked the door behind me, the silence inside that apartment felt heavier than it used to. Emma's place was small, cramped, even toys under the couch, paintbrushes soaking in jars by its sink, a stack of preschool drawings staped crooked on the fridge, but it felt alive. One evening, about 6 weeks after hearing, I was giving Owen a bath. He had 2 toy boats crashing into each other making dramatic explosion sounds. Ryan, he said. Yeah, buddy, you're going to stay forever. The question landed gently, but it stayed. Would you like that? I asked. He nodded. Serious as could be. I like when you're here. You make my mom smile. I had to look away for a second. I like being here, too. I told him, then you should stay forever. He said like it was the easiest decision in the world. After he was asleep, I told Emma what he'd said. She laughed and cried at the same time. He's not wrong, she whispered. You don't make me smile. You don't make me smile. You make me smile, too, I said. She looked at me differently then. Not like someone wanted to help. Not like someone holding onto a rope. I think I'm falling for you, she admitted softly. And that's Perez. This was supposed to be temporary. It was supposed to be pretend. I moved a little closer. I stopped pretending a while ago, I said. She searched my face. Is it real? Yeah, I answered. It's real. We kissed for the first time that night. Slow, careful, like we were both aware that something precious had ground quietly between us, and neither of us wanted to rush it. When we pulled back, she laughed through her tears. We got married before we even kissed. Yeah, I said, we did everything backwards. She roosted her head on my shoulder. Maybe that's why it works. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was standing on the outside of my own life. 3 months later, I gave notice on my. There wasn't much to pack. A couch, a bed, a few boxes of books I hadn't opened in years. The place had never really been a home. It had just been somewhere to sleep. Emma and I squeezed my things into her small apartment. It was tighter now. Shoes by the door, my coffee mug beside her paintbrush, Owen's toys, somehow multiplying garnet. It felt crowded. It felt right. One Tuesday morning, while I was flipping pancakes, Owen looked up at me from the kitchen table. "Papa Ryan," he said casually, "can I have chocolate teacups in mine?" The spatula froze in my hand. "What did you call me?" I suddenly looked unsure. "Is that okay? I can call you something else?" I knelt beside him, so we were eye to eye. "Papa Ryan," I said slowly. "As perfect," he grinned, and that was that. When Emma hearted later, she pressed her hand to her mouth and blinked back tears. We had a lot of those. Now the good Jordan kept his supervised visits every other Saturday. We dropped Owen off at a small building where a social worker watched from behind a desk. Owen never complained. He just held my hand a little tighter on the drive there. Spring came and we started talking about finding a bigger place somewhere, where Owen could have his own room, maybe even a yard. One evening in April, after Owen was asleep, Emma turned to me on "I want a real wedding," she said. I smiled. "We're already married." "I know, but I want one where we stand up in front of everyone and choose each other out loud." So, we planned a small ceremony in her aunt's backyard. Simple chairs, yellow flowers. Claire came, quiet but respectful. When she saw Owen holding my hand, something in her softened. Emma wore a yellow dress. Owen carried the rings with both hands, like they were made of glass. When it was my turn to speak, I didn't read from paper. 7 months ago, you knocked on my door and asked me to trust you, I said. I said because something in me knew you were with it today. I'm not standing here because of ink on a page. I choose you every day. Emmy's voice shook when she answered. "When I came to your door, I was drowning," she said. "You didn't just throw me a rope, you stayed." We kissed while Owen clapped too loud and everyone laughed. Later that night, after the lights were off and the yard was quiet again, Emma and I sat on the porch steps. "Yuck, no," she said softly. "I was so scared you'd say no that night." "I almost did," I admitted. "But I saw how hard you were fighting for him and I knew you wanted to be someone who stayed." She leaned her head against my shoulder. Love didn't show up the way I expected it to. It didn't come with flowers or music or careful planning. It came at me, soaked in rain, holding legal papers and hope. And sometimes if you're brave enough to open the door, that's enough. If this story found a place in your heart, stay with us. There are always more quiet moments waiting, Tobe told. It could be reflex, she cautioned softly.